generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast presented by Keeneland. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News.
How y'all doing? I am Randy Moss with NBC Sports and the Buyer Speed Figure team with, there she is. Lucy's back there taking a nap as always.
Zoe Cadman with First Racing and First TV. Southern California, it's still dark out. It's early and it's raining. Yes, it's been months since we saw the rain here, and it's going to rain all day. It's going to be fabulous.
You got a clock back there for us. I think it said 6:30 a.m.
6:30 a.m. Bright and early. That's
why Lucy's out.
Well, we appreciate Zoe getting up to help us out at this early time. I wouldn't, if the roles were reversed, I wouldn't have got up at this early to do that.
We know. We know. We tried to make you go early before, Bill. It's a big no.
Yeah. So anyways, it's just kind of a quiet time in racing, which is okay. It gives us a chance to reflect on some various issues and whatnot. And the first one I wanted to bring up is the decision to not run Napoleon Solo in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And Randy, I remember you were raving about this horse. The horse won the Champagne by 6.5 lengths in fractions of 22.53, 44.24, and 107.88 wire to wire. And they did the same thing with 'Tis the Law, but is this going to be the beginning of a new pattern? The Derby is so important and so big that people will keep their horses out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile because they think that's the best way to get them to Louisville on the first Saturday in May.
I'd be surprised, Bill, if it's a pattern. Because if you go back and you look at the horses that won the Champagne in the past, in the years that the Breeders' Cup was in Southern California, right? Those years where you think you would have the most reluctance to run a Champagne winner in the Breeders' Cup. Chancer McPatrick ran, Timberlake ran, Jack Christopher was intended to run, Firenze Fire, Practical Joke, Daredevil, Havana, Shanghai Bobby won both races. That's the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10, other than 'Tis the Law. So, 'Tis the Law and Funny Side both could have run in the Breeders' Cup, but Barclay Tagg and Sakatoga decided not to. I think it's going to be, honestly, my opinion, I think it's going to be a one-off. I think if we look back on it 10 years from now.
I actually reached out to Chad Summers. He's like, why wasn't I on the podcast? I'm like, because I wasn't on it last week, Chad. And he texted me the following. He said he's not running. He said he ran a 9 on the sheets, 94 by a speed figure, which you obviously know, 2.5 on the Thoroughgraph. He said he was 0.34 off the 6 furlong tracks record and 0.7 off the 7 furlong track record held by Artax. So all of these factors were going into him, just putting him away and just, leaving him till next year. Says the horse is doing great. He's just simply not coming because he feels he ran too fast. And boy, he was shockingly impressive.
Oh, I thought he had a legitimate chance to beat Ted Noffey and Brandt if they had chosen that route. But I can understand. Yeah. Especially nowadays when trainers are so, I think, overly concerned about the bounce factor if a horse just runs a giant race. And obviously that race was giant.
And I think it's the shipping across country. Mm-hmm. If the Breeders' Cup was in New York or Kentucky, I think it may be a different kettle of fish, to be perfectly honest. But the fact of running such massive numbers, those are huge numbers for a 2-year-old, and then having to ship as well was probably the nail and the straw that broke the camel's back.
Did Chad say they were going to look at the Remsen, or are they going to?
He did not. He didn't. Okay. He didn't say anything.
All right.
And Bill would tell him that no good horse ever wins the Remsen, so it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll have to have that conversation with Mr. Summers the next chance I get. We're going to learn more about a horse by the name of Further Ado, who is owned by Spendthrift Farms, because Ned Toffey is coming up in our next segment, and he is the general manager of Spendthrift Farms. He'll be our Gainesway guest of the week. But Zoe, it's an unusual horse. He wasn't precocious enough to break his maiden, but in his 3rd lifetime start, won by 20 lengths. What did you make of him?
Visually, he was pretty darn amazing. He really was. And he comes out of some live races in Saratoga talking won one of the maiden races he was in, and he came back to run very, very well in the Champagne. It was his third start. It was the 2 turns that really, I think, was the clincher there for him. But if I'm going to compare Further Ado with Napoleon Solo, time-wise, it's not the same. He got kind of a much easier setup, 23.17, 47, 111 and change, 137, 143 and 2. Yes, he won by 20. I'm not sure who was behind him, but visually, yes, horses just don't do that. And it doesn't look like that we'll see him going to the Breeders' Cup either.
Yeah. And in the Breeders' Futurity, Ted Noffey was stalking a 48 and change half-mile pace, if you want to compare that to Napoleon Solo. So, look, Further Ado, his first and second starts, he was 5th and 3rd. You mentioned at Saratoga. He's bred to be a distance horse. He's by Gun Runner. He's a John Oxley bred colt. The Dam, Sky Dreamer, traces back to Beautiful Pleasure, an outstanding race mare that Oxley raced with John Ward way back in the day. So Further Ado's, bred to be a good horse, and we'll see what they choose to do with him next. It's not going to be the Breeders' Cup, but we'll see what path they plot out for him. He's an exciting horse. 98 Beyer speed figure, and honestly, it could even have been, you can make the case, it could have been a few points higher. It could have been a triple-digit Beyer. So he really, really ran fast.
I wanted to touch on one more thing about Chad Summers and Napoleon Solo. He bought him for $40,000 off of Glenwood Farm. Now, if you ever see Chad at a yearling sale, he doesn't walk around with a catalog or an iPad. All he does, guys, is he picks up, there's usually a sheet at the front of the consignment that just gives the horses, the sires or the mares that they're out of, right? With a number, and you tick off the ones you want to look at. So Chad picks up one of those, and he writes his notes on the sheet for the horses he's looking at. And at the end of the day, he's got like a stack of sheets, probably 6 inches high, that then he puts in the catalog. So I'm like, what? Why do you do that? Why do you waste all that time? He's like, I don't want to be swayed by the catalog page. So he doesn't want to know that he's looking at a half to a grade 1 winner, or, a full to a grade 1 winner, because he might not like it. So that's what he does anywhere, any sale. And that's how he came up with Napoleon Solo. And he's bought some good horses. So fair dues to Chad.
So I want to ask you something, Zoe, since you're so sales connected. I see a lot of these huge money purchases by Baffert for the Avengers and for Amerzadan and all that. And then you go back and look at their pedigrees, and very few of them have these unbelievably blue-blooded pedigrees. Does Bob kind of do sort of the same thing at sales? Is he much more focused on the physical than he is on what's on the page?
Absolutely. Physical comes first. We all have, brothers and sisters that may not be up to much. So a lot of the times that doesn't really matter. Donato is the first scout, and then Bob comes in after, and he'll be like, yeah, no, don't like that one. What about that one over there? Because he'll just see something walking. But he tried to steal a horse off me at the September sale. I was looking at her. I'm like, hey, that one's mine. You just wait your turn, Bob. So yes, it's purely the individual first. And, you'll see a lot of it turn up at the 2-year-old sale, high priced horses for a $10,000 stud fee, just because they look so good on the track. And guys like the Avengers, they can afford to do that and have some losses, because there are certainly some losses. You'll see horses show up with Brittany Russell. They paid $500,000 for that are breaking their maiden for $50,000. But you've got the one dual grade 1 winner that's going to be syndicated to stud for millions. So at that point, in case you can afford to do it, but it is very much about the individual. So yeah, Chad going around there with just his cards and picking up Napoleon Solo for $40,000. Good for him. Really, it's good for him.
Yeah, $40,000, remarkable that he was able to do that.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. This past week, Keeneland announced that a 25% ownership in Breeders' Cup Sprint contender Ben Tornado will be offered at the championship sale in the Del Mar paddock on Wednesday, October the 29th. Ben Tornado, who earned $1.2 million, was second in last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint to Straight No Chaser and is among the leading candidates for the race this year. We'll be right back after these messages from Keeneland.
Dear racing fans, we've been waiting for you. We've been working, prepping, training, putting together thrilling races, high stakes, favorite traditions, and fresh experiences. From right on the rail to the top of the hill. Whether it's your first meet or your 50th, we can't wait to welcome you back this fall. Love, Keeneland.
Fastest Horse of the Week brought to you as always by the Fast Sires at WinStar Farm. It's always fun to talk about the sires at WinStar Farm because there are so many fast sires there. And yes, we repeat stallions occasionally, and it's okay to do that because they're just so fast. But it's cool that we have a new stallion to talk about at WinStar, and that would be Patch Adams. He was being pointed for to run against a great field in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Those plans fell through. And now he has been retired to stud for next year at WinStar. He was quite the racehorse, one of the nation's premier 3-year-old sprinters this season. Back-to-back grade ones in the Woody Stevens and the Allen Jerkins. He was undefeated, going 7 furlongs. Patch Adams, quite the horse on the racetrack. Now he'll be at WinStar. His fee is yet to be determined. Fastest Horse of the Week. Not as much to choose from this week, simply because almost all the fast horses in America, the fastest horses, are getting ready for the Breeders' Cup. We had one outstanding performance on Thursday at the Belmont at Aqueduct meeting in an allowance race. You remember a horse named El Grande O, owned by Barry Swartz, trained by Linda Rice. He was a New York bred who ran pretty well as a 3-year-old in some of the prep races, one-turn prep races, getting ready for the Kentucky Derby. Of course, he didn't run in the Derby. Recently, he's had some traffic problems. He was declared a non-starter in his most recent race because of issues at the gate, whatever. He bounced back in a big way Thursday at Aqueduct, narrowly winning an allowance race at 6 furlongs, but running 109.29 for 6 furlongs. Buyer speed figure of 99 makes El Grande O our fastest horse of the week.
Welcome in now the Gainesway guest of the week, and is none other than Ned Toffey, the general manager of Spendthrift Farms. Boy, are things going well for Spendthrift, Ned. And you gave me your list of your Breeders' Cup horses the other day, and it looks like you're going to run 5, correct?
Looks like it right now, but you know how racing is. That
right.
Could end up being very different, but that's the plan right now.
Well, we'll get into each horse individually, but how do you feel overall about your team that you're bringing out there? You're bringing out some very talented horses.
Yeah, I not just going for the weather. It's a really nice group, and I think everybody is live. I think the one is the most sort of an unknown for me is Brave Deb in the Juvenile fillies, just because you're never quite sure what's going to be coming from across the pond. But I think she's really talented. She's 2 for 2, and Richard felt like she was just toying with the other horses in her last start in the Grade 3. So she, but I'm not quite sure where she stands relative to what she'll be up against, but still, I think we got 5 very good shots.
So for the people that might not be so Breeders' Cup savvy right now on as we tape this October the 14th, we're looking at Ted Noffey in the Juvenile, Tommy Joe in the Juvenile fillies, Copion / Tamara in the filly mare sprint. I want to follow up with a question there. And then you mentioned Brave Deb. So it's been mentioned in the media that Richard Mandella is holding out the option of possibly running Copion in the sprint against the males rather than running them against each other in the filly mare sprint. What's going to go into that decision?
I think ultimately we've always done fairly well by just leaving that to the trainer, and particularly Richard. I can remember a long time ago having that discussion about Beholder and whether to run her. There was the Juvenile fillies, and then there was a Juvenile sprint race that year, and we were back and forth up and down. We said finally, I remember Wayne and I were sitting talking about it. I think we were actually sitting in Cracker Barrel, and we said, it suddenly occurred to us that let's leave it to the guy who's in the Hall of Fame, who's training the horse and in the barn every day with the horse. So, ultimately we'll let him let Richard make that call. We fiddled around with trying Kopi and stretching out, and I still think she probably can, but it just ended up circumstances. Everything didn't really fall into place quite the way we wanted. And I know that Richard has for quite some time been really high on Tamara and how she's coming back. Unfortunately, she ended up getting a whole lot more time than we thought she would need. But that time, as so often is the case, was really, really good for her. And so I think he's probably for a long time thought that she was going to come back really, really strong. And so I think that's sort of the genesis of some of this thinking is looking for options for Kopian. But we'll let Richard make that call and obviously look at those fields and what she's up against. But we'd also like to. We don't mind taking two good shots in the same race. So that'll require a little more time.
All right. Thanks for the news update there. It's also newsworthy, by the way, that B. Wayne Hughes ate at Cracker Barrel, but that's another another topic.
It's he was a regular there when he was in Lexington.
Yeah, you definitely see him there. All right, Ned, let's talk about the year you had in the past 10 days. You got Tommy Joe with the grade 1 Alcibiades. We'll get to her in just a moment. Tamara, the grade 3 Chillingworth. Ted Noffey, the grade 1 Breeders' Futurity. A Local Knowledge won a maiden special weight at Keeneland. Get Back Loretta won a maiden special Keeneland. Brave Deb won the grade 3 Surfer Girl. Further Ado won by 20 lengths at Kentucky. And Major Dude just took down the Artie Schiller. Everywhere I've looked over the past 7 days, I've just seen orange and purple. It's like Halloween for the beginning of October. What can you say about this past week and what it's meant for Spendthrift?
Well, look, as everybody watching this and all of you all know, is that racing's a tough game. So that, there's been plenty of weekends where it did not go like this. So we really appreciate and are enjoying this run that we've had here lately. But, and I think it's one of the things that I think is most gratifying is that it's sort of coming from a lot of different places. A number of these are homebreds. A number of them are by our own sires. Some of these we bought out of yearling sales. Some of these we bought out of 2-year-old and training sales. So, and I think the thing that's nice about that is that throughout all of those horses, it really encompasses every aspect of what we do. And so it's kind of a culmination isn't really quite the right word, but it's the coming together of all of what we've been trying to do and what we've been trying to build here over time. And I think that's one of the things that we're most proud of is the team that we've been able to put together. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that now.
So what about Tommy Joe? Tell me about the race, because I think along with a lot of other people, were expecting her to just park. Mm-hmm. And she was never going to park. What were the general discussions about her after the race?
Yeah, it's sort of funny because I think in a sense, it's not often that you get to win a grade 1 and feel a little let down. Because I think we were sort of, she's been really highly touted from the beginning. I mean, yes. Todd and Johnny probably held her in higher regard than Ted Noffey early on. And I think she, maybe she just didn't relax quite as well as we would have liked her to. You saw her throwing her head a little bit as they started straightening that way down the backstretch. And so I think that's going to be the trick to her. If Johnny can get her to relax, I think 2 turns is not a problem. I think if she doesn't relax, then she probably run a similar race to what she did. But I think she's capable of more, but she's got to relax. And I think that's actually one of Ted Noffey's strengths is that he is a really laid back, horse, and he does relax very, very well. And
just like his namesake.
Except his namesake, I'm not quite as fast. So.
Ned, in the opening segment, we talked about Further Ado, the horse that won by 20 lengths. First of all, it took this horse a while for the light bulb to go on. You usually don't see maidens win by 20 lengths in their third lifetime start. But did you and the team give any thought to running him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
Yeah, and I think in talking with Brad, that would probably be a little bit quick back, especially off that kind of an effort. And I think that, knock on wood, hopefully there's lots of bigger and better things on the horizon for this horse. And I think you could maybe cost him some chances at a future trying to roll him back so quickly. So, we'll look at, very possibly the Jockey Club in Kentucky, which would give him about 6 weeks. But, obviously, as everything in this game, it's day to day, but, he seems to have come out of the race really well. And I think he's just a horse. He'd run one turn twice, and it makes all the sense in the world, when you look at his pedigree and his physical, that 2 turns would be his friend, and it certainly was.
Ned, I think people outside the sport sometimes don't appreciate all the vagaries that go into thoroughbred racing and how things aren't always what they seem to be on the surface. Take us back to the La Brea when you had Tamara. She was going to be odds on. Mm-hmm. Everybody was excited about Tamara. And then it turns out to be 180 degrees the opposite when they actually run the race. Take us back to what you were thinking that whole week.
Well, with Copian, I mean, we weren't sure. Richard was even, maybe he was believing the odds makers. I don't know. I mean, I think she was 37-1. Mm-hmm. And he was even having some reservations about the wisdom of going in there off of such a long layoff. And I'll really give Eric Gustafson a lot of credit, because he basically, we talked a little bit about it, and Richard had seen some things that were, he was a little worried that she'd gotten a little tired out of one of her works leading up to that race, but he knew early on she had missed the allowance race that was going to be her prep. And so we said, look, there wasn't much else that made a lot of sense for her. And we sort of made the decision, look, let's just train her up to that. And Richard's a master at doing that. And she had 3 consecutive 6 furlong bullets going into that race. And I guess, it's hindsight. We should have been loading up and betting her. And I'm not a big bettor. And I'm usually thinking about all kinds of other things going into a race, but it probably made all the sense in the world that she was ready to run a big race, because Richard is so good at that. But Eric is the one who said, look, we've been pointing to this. This has been the plan. Let's just run. And it certainly worked out. So.
Now, was she a substitute for Tamara in there, or were you going to run the 2 against each other all along?
No, they were both going to be pointed for that. Okay. And, but Tamara's always had the big reputation, but I think we were already kind of beginning to feel like Copian was going to be really good this year, just because she really grew up and developed, from last year to this. She just got a lot taller, bigger, stronger, and she really was thriving. And at that point, Tamara hadn't progressed physically in quite that same way. And, it was frustrating to have to miss so much time with her. And she was coming off the track and kicked the rail and it wasn't even clear whether that was what caused the issue, but when we really started looking closely at a hind ankle on her, there was just some stuff going on that needed attention. And so we did that. And I think, as I said, so often extra time is a horse's best friend. And Richard is, again, very good at that. And so that's been really good for her. But it was frustrating to miss the beginning of the year with her. But Copian, we were already beginning to think was emerging as what might be a real powerhouse. So, and so the early part of the year was really good with her. And I kind of second guessed myself and all of us really on kind of the decision. We thought about stretching her out. I think kind of with the idea of not locking horns with Tamara, but those plans really didn't come together. So, we're back to possibly running them against each other. So,
Ned, could I pencil in Ted as the most likely winner if I had to put you on the spot right now?
I'm not going there.
All right. Okay.
I'll let you all speculate on that.
That's fine.
He's a good horse and he's doing well. We're excited about his chances, but I'm going to leave that speculation to you all.
You mentioned you're at Fasig-Tipton. Would Spendthrift be looking at Streak of Luck, who's been supplemented to the sale?
Well, we're always looking. Look, there's, she's interesting. Very exciting. The authentic filly that they're putting in a flash sale, recent Grade 1 winner. So there's always lots of possibilities out there. But Streak of Luck is, she's only 10. She's very nice. Had a nice yearling that I think Mike Rapoli bought this summer, half to Ted Noffey, exciting mare. Wonderful breeders. The Joneses, Marie Jones, just a wonderful, classy lady. So nice to be able to have this kind of success with a horse that she produced.
Ned, let me change the subject just a little bit. The way you can measure, one of the ways you can measure how well a stud farm is doing is by their stud fees for their horses. If they're going down, you're not doing well. If they're going up, you're doing very well. You guys released your stud fees the other day. Into Mischief stays the same at $250,000. Obviously, he's one of the premier sires in the country, if not the premier sire. But how about these other numbers? Vacoma from $35,000 to $100,000, Omaha Beach from $35,000 to $75,000, and Yaupan from $25,000 to $60,000. What does that say about what your sires have accomplished over this year?
Well, one of the things that I'm happy about is that the younger horses that made the big jump are Yaupan. We didn't announce until just recently, but our salesmen who do a great job, Mark Toothaker, Brian Lyle, Des Dempsey, and actually my son is part of that team as well, Daniel Toffey. They do a great job, and Yaupan, if he's not already full, he will be. And Omaha Beach and Vacoma are already full. It tells you that, look, we're very fortunate in that we have Tammy and Eric Gustafson who've done such an incredible job of carrying on the legacy that Wayne Hughes built here. But we have the resources to go after high quality horses. But as we all know, that's not a guarantee of success. So we've been fortunate to have some horses that have gotten off to a great start. And that's really a credit to our breeders. I mean, one of the things that our salesmen do such a good job of is building relationships with all the breeders in this industry. And that's really what you need. I mean, we can, all the stud farms can fight over all these stallions all they want. If we don't have, we're not being patronized by the right people and enough of them, then these horses have no shot to be successful. So I think that's where our sales guys have done a great job, is building those relationships. And we've got a lot of great breeders they're the ones that are doing the heavy lifting, causing these horses to have the kind of success that they're having. So,
well, Ned, when we talk about Spendthrift's what appears to be a great lineup for the Breeders' Cup. We talk about the 5 horses that you actually own, but then there's White Abarrio, who's bred by Spendthrift. There's a Japanese horse named American Stage, who's probably coming over, bred by Spendthrift. I don't know how many. I can't even count them all by Into Mischief, including Sovereignty, of course.
Yeah, right? He's okay, too.
He's okay. But what I think is so cool about Into Mischief, and it goes back again to the vagaries of the sport, is the humble beginnings that he had as a stallion at Spendthrift.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe Wayne was sitting at Cracker Barrel in Lexington when he came up with this plan for Into Mischief, but it's really remarkable where he was and where he is now.
It was sort of Cracker Barrel pricing at the beginning. So, the remarkable thing is that one of the programs that we're best known for is something called Share the Upside, where if you breed 2 years at the beginning of the horse's stud career, produce 2 live foals, pay your stud fees on time, you've earned a lifetime breeding right to that horse. And that's been a great program that breeders really appreciate. And that program was started because for a number of reasons. One was because it was a time when the economy was tough and breeders were really struggling to be successful. And so Wayne was looking for ways to keep people afloat and keep them successful. But at the same time, it was started because Into Mischief had just completed his first year at stud, had not bred very many mares. And we thought, well, what the heck are we going to do in year 2? If that's all we could get in year 1, how are we going to get him a decent book in year 2? And that's part of where that program came from. So it's really remarkable to think that it was an incentive program to just convince people to breed to a horse that is now doing things that haven't been done since Bold Ruler and Lexington.
And what was that fee?
So his first year, he was 12.5.
Wow.
And he dropped down from there. And so to earn a Share the Upside breeding right in him, all you had to do was breed 2 years, or even we did it 2 mares that first year. It was some variations in it, but it was $6,500. So for $13,000 in stud fees, you could have earned a lifetime breeding right. Into Mischief, has gone on to do truly historic things. And I think that is as good an illustration of as you say, of the vagaries of this game. And Wayne Hughes used to love to say about this game, nobody knows. Some people have a better guess, a better opinion than others, but at the end of the day, nobody really knows. And if he isn't proof of it, I don't know. I don't know who is.
Do you still have people that have lifetime breeding shares to Into Mischief that were part of that $6,500 bargain?
I'm glad you asked that, because that's the other part of it. A couple of times I've had people from the Darley Flying Star to young people out, and I often will bring Into Mischief out and tell them that story. But the second part of the story is that Lexington is supposed to be a place where all the experts are, and it's so with all the experts who were presented an opportunity to have a lifetime breeding right into the horse that Into Mischief's become, only 15 people took us up on it, and of those 15 people, 7 did not follow through on the program. They dropped out halfway through, just deciding it wasn't worth it. And so there were only 8 lifetime breeding rights. Now, we would have sold to what we would have at the time probably estimated half his book would have been, 75 mares. So we'd have done 60, 70 of those breeding rights, and only 15 people took us up on it. 40 people took us up on a horse named Notional that came in the same year as Into Mischief. Now, Notional has since gone off in the standing at stud in Oklahoma. He's hard to find these days, but so it illustrates how just really at the end of the day, nobody knows. And we're just out here really trying to make the best guesses that we all can. And sometimes it works out like it is for us right now, but next week it may not.
And now a lifetime breeding right to Into Mischief.
They've traded for upwards of $1 million. So it's it's
all right. That's cool.
It seems to have come full circle to Dick Mandella. What has he meant to Spendthrift? I mean, he trained Into Mischief. Everything comes through Richard Mandella. What has he meant to Spendthrift over the years?
Well, he's meant a lot. I know, just from my standpoint, I've learned so much from just dealing with Richard. He's all class. He is very much in line with the way we want to do things, where he puts the horse first. He's going to do the right thing by the horse. And if that means making a tough phone call and a tough decision that we're scratching the day before a grade one or the Breeders' Cup or whatever it might be, and we've had plenty of those, but it's Richard putting the horse first, and that's what he does. But he's a master horseman. He's a complete horseman. He started as a young guy breaking a lot of horses. His dad was a blacksmith. He's a great foot guy himself, and he's a remarkable horseman. And he does such a great job, and he's done such a great job with us for a number of different type of horses. And now I can't say enough about having him. Early on, I remember we were at Saratoga, and every time I told Wayne, I said, this is really frustrating looking at horses with Richard, because every time I want to disagree with him on a horse, somebody stops him and asks him for his autograph, and then he has to stop and say, oh wait, I have to go back over to the Hall of Fame, because he was in there and all the former Hall of Famers are being asked, former inductees were being asked to go over. So it gets a little hard to argue with Richard, but again, I can't say enough about him, but he's done so much good for us in so many ways.
You have a lot of young stallions coming in now, and obviously we go to the yearling sales and look at the young ones. One that you have standing that actually really surprised me by his progeny that I've loved pretty much everyone I've seen is Moonnagal. What can you tell me about him and your hopes for Moonnagal? Because I love Moonnagal. He kind of feels like a little bit of a throwback horse. He's a big, powerfully made horse with a lot of bone. Was a really talented horse. He wasn't the speed demon that so much of the commercial market loves today. But he was far from a plotter. But he was precocious. He was a accomplished horse at 2 and early in his 3-year-old year, and before going on to win the Belmont. And so this horse has as much talent, as good at credentials as any horse that we've got. He's really a substantial horse. We bred a number of mares to him. I love the idea of supporting him. There's so many speed mares out there in the marketplace. And so I love the idea of trying to, with a classic type horse like him, trying to inject a little more speed. And that's what I hope that breeders will do. And it's really been kind of my, I'm hoping that breeders will think that way and continue to support him. Because I think he's got a heck of a shot. And again, he's shown what kind of quality he can throw.
Well, Ned, we want to thank you. And I got through this whole thing without screwing up the Ned Toffey, Ted Noffey thing. I'm pretty proud of myself. I don't know if you watched our one of our previous podcasts, but I tripped over that name about 20 times.
I did see some outtakes. So,
But anyways, Ned, thanks so much for joining us. Best of luck at the Breeders' Cup, and we'll be looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks very much.
Ned Toffey, our guest of the week here on the TDN Writers Room, brought to you by Gainesway, the home of stallions like Caracante, one of Caracante's top offspring in the news right now. She Feels Pretty, who I think is the best North American-based female grass horse being pointed for the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf. We're excited to watch that. But meanwhile, Caracante represented by a winner at Keeneland. That would be Common Defense, trained by Kenning McPeak, who beat Shadwell's El Razine at a 1.5 mile allowance race at Keeneland on Sunday. Caracante also had Soleil Volant, who won the Kent Stakes at Delaware Park last month. Super Trainer Gray Emotion. Another big month for Caracante, who's coming off a Keeneland September yearling sale where his offering sold for up to $275,000. Gainesway, power, passion, performance.
The sun shines bright on Caracante. His first crops of racing age are showing brilliance on the racetrack with a high percentage of stakes winners. His versatility is evidenced by winners on all surfaces across the globe.
Spenderella could not have been more impressive.
She feels more than pretty. She feels fantastic.
It is all she feels pretty. The sun shines bright on this value sire. Caracante, standing at Gainesway.
In this week's edition of First Things First, it's all about Oktoberfest. If you know me, you'll know I love beer. So it's time to raise your steins and strap on your lederhosen as we return to Oktoberfest once again this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. You'll find plenty of beer. You can play some cornhole. Randy, you might like some cornhole. You know we have keg rolling. If you've ever seen that, you just stand at the end of the apron and you roll a beer keg all the way down the grandstand. So that's fun as well. We got musical chairs and a whole lot of stuff going on, but most importantly, some really good beer at Santa Anita. Don't forget, we have free Fridays at Santa Anita, 1 o'clock post time, free entry, and not quite free beer, but we do have a very good happy hour going on that lasts all day long, which I'm a big fan of as well. And on Saturday, we'll have a 10-race card, a couple of stakes to highlight, the Lure Stakes and the Anokia Stakes on Sunday for the 2-year-old fillies. There's lots going on at Santa Anita this weekend. Do you have any lederhosen?
We're recording this on Tuesday morning, and the news on pioneering female jockey Diane Crump is not good right now. She has a form of aggressive brain cancer, and I hope that she can stay around for a while, but I don't think anybody is predicting that she's going to survive this. So, Zoe, you're the perfect person to have on for this. By the time you came along, the, Julie Crones of the world were the ones that had kind of opened a lot of doors. But who opened the doors for the Julie Crones of the world? It was this group of pioneering female jockeys. Diane Crump, the first female ever to ride in a parimutuel race, also the first female ever to ride in the Kentucky Derby. I don't know if you knew her personally, ever talked to her, but, what kind of respect do you have for not only just her, but these pioneering women?
Well, honestly, I wouldn't be sitting here. There is no way I would be sitting here without Diane Crump. 1969 was the first woman to ride a parimutuel race. 1971, she was the first one to ride in the Kentucky Derby. So quite frankly, I wouldn't know Bill. I wouldn't know Randy. I probably would never have left England. Yes, she's 77 years old. She's got brain cancer. I think I was first notified by Donna Brothers. If you go to her Twitter page, you'll find a GoFundMe for Diane Crump on there. Please donate if you can. That's just trying to make her last few months, however long it is, as comfortable as they can. So yeah, Diane Crump, a trailblazer. Yes, she did not win thousands and thousands of races. I think she wound up winning 235, which back then was still a lot. And to even ride in the Kentucky Derby, I've not ridden in the Kentucky Derby. I've not even been close. So yeah, without her, I would not be here today, for sure.
Yeah, and some of the things that they had to go through, not just her, there was a situation where who was the jockey that actually got her license before? Was it Penny Early got her license before Diane Crump, but then something came up and she wasn't able to ride. But there was male jockeys who were boycotting the races with the females in them. There was one, I don't believe it was Diane, but there was another instance where, they weren't in the normal jockeys room, obviously, and some female jockey was like in a trailer. They threw rocks at the trailer. I mean, really idiotic stuff. And to think today, nobody even thinks twice about seeing a female on a horse or on any kind of horse, be it a 5-claimer at Parks or in a Grade 1 stakes race. Look at all the success that Julie Crone had. So we wish her well. And by the way, she had a book that came out in 2020 which was the 50th anniversary of her ride in the Derby. And if you want to learn more about her, why don't you Google that or go onto Amazon and take a look at that, because she's had a phenomenally interesting life. Someone else who is in the news is Steve Asmussen, and he won his 11,000th, yes, 11,000th race Saturday night at Remington Park. And no surprise, I mean, every one of these milestones, you know that they're coming. But the thing about Steve that is so, well, one of the many things that's so fascinating to me about him, he's a relatively young man. He's 60 years old. He's not going anywhere for a long, long time. Over the last 10 years, he's had 3,825 winners, averaging 382 winners a year. That means if he stays at this pace by age 70, he'll be nearing 14,000 wins.
Wow.
And I would think that the number's going to go even higher than that. There's no slowing him down. Still remarkable how he gets a kick out of winning the 4th at Will Rogers Downs just as much as he likes to win the Kentucky Derby. But Randy, you've been around Steve Asmussen a lot. I mean, there's not a whole lot more to say about a guy, but these numbers are just fabulous.
Well, I've been around him since he very first got started in the training business. You're going to be hearing from him, by the way. He's not 60 yet. He's got another 5 weeks before he turns 60. He's actually 59. Todd Pletcher's 58, right? So they're both relatively young, and Todd's setting new records in lifetime earnings, and Steve Asmussen setting new records in races won. It's unbelievable. He's so organized. That's a lot of it, right? It's organization to have so many different wings of the Asmussen stable going on at so many different places, right? I mean, he can be at Churchill Downs while he's got horses running in Sam Houston and all these other places. Great help. Scott Blasi, his number one assistant, has been invaluable, and he's got others too around the country that have done exceptionally well. And I mean, he's got a nice pipeline going forward, current and going forward, with his primary owner, Ron Winchell, who owned, of course, he had Tappet, he had Gunrunner. So he's got ends right now to 2 of those super stallions. And so that kind of helps the available blood stock that Asmussen has. And it's just, he's been fantastic with the way he's handled all this.
He is simply amazing. And he literally has a photographic memory. I'm not sure it's all organization. He's got 2 good assistants, not only Scott Blasi, but Darren Fleming as well, who's been with him just as long as Scott. I remember when they were in a 12-horse barn at the fairgrounds, because I used to go and clip their horses. So he's come a long way. 1986 is when he won his first race. He obviously trained for Vern Winchell, Ron's dad, before that. He's trained Horses of the Year, and he still trains $4,000 claimers. He's won over 1,000 wins for the Highlandbrooks alone. Bill and Corinne Highlandbrook, over 1,000 winners. To this day, he has won 1,527 races as an owner-trainer. He puts his money where his mouth is. So over 1,500 of those wins have come out of his own pocket. He really is incredible. 2009, he won 650 races that year. Ray Paulick tweeted out this the other day about his 11,000. If you were to win one race every day, 365 days a year, it would take 30 years and 50 days to reach 11,000 wins. That really puts it into perspective. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's truly amazing.
One more thing about Steve that I've noticed over the years, and it's one reason why when we do NBC telecast, even if he doesn't have a horse in the race, Jerry Bailey and I like to go visit with Steve because he's got great opinions about horses, but he's very realistic about the horses in his barn. He spots them exceptionally well. I can't tell you how many times he's had a horse in a race and we've gone to see him. And, what about so-and-so? And nah, I don't really want to run him. The owner wants me to run him. We don't say that on the air, but it's, he doesn't get overly high on his horses unless they really deserve it. And that lets him spot them properly. And he's made a lot of money and won a lot of races by doing exactly that. The TDN Writers Room also sponsored by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, PHBA. When we talk about these Pennsylvania bred horses, a lot of times we're talking about horses that have warrior in their name or have reward in their name. There's a good reason for that. One of the leading Pennsylvania breeders is Warriors Reward, LLC. And now they've got another one. Last Monday at Presque Isle, Candy Reward won her second straight HBPA stakes, giving her a fifth win on the year in Pennsylvania. To wit, congratulations to the 17 breeders who now have surpassed $100,000 in total awards through September. At the top, Warriors Reward, LLC, fighting it out with Uptown Charlie Brown's stud. Warriors Reward currently leads with $671K. It's possible they could be the first Pennsylvania breeder to hit the $1 million mark in Breeders' Awards. That Pennsylvania program has paid 303 breeders with awards so far in 2025. For more information about that program, go to pabred.com or call Brian Sanfratello, 610-444-1050.
The Pennsylvania breeding program is the best program in the country. The stallion awards, the owner bonuses, also the restricted races and the stakes races for Pennsylvania breds. This year, 8 breeders are on track to earn over $200,000 in breeders awards, and 2 could hit the $1 million mark. We have the best program in the country. Take advantage of the fantastic program that we have.
Learn more at pabred.com.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
The TDN Writers Room, sponsored by Kentucky Breds. That casts a pretty wide net. But here are just a few of the latest Grade 1 winners bred in Kentucky. Intrepido, American Pharoah winner. Jen, Calumet Farm, won the Spinster. She's headed for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Simply in Front, who won the First Lady Stakes. Ted Noffey, undefeated winner of the Breeders' Futurity, Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Tommy Joe, we've talked about those already with Ned, undefeated winner of the Grade 1 Alcibiades, headed to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Now let's go back in time a little bit. Kentucky Downs. We like to talk about all that money. Kentucky Downs continues its growth trajectory with this year's meet, seeing a surge in not just purses, but also in wagering. The total purse is almost $42 million. That's a 12% increase over 2024's insane numbers and an eye-popping 162% jump since 2021. Keep popping those HHR machines, Kentucky Downs. Kentucky Breds also captured 16 of 19 stakes races during the Kentucky Downs meet. Kentucky Breds, breed them, raise them, race them. We all win, especially Kentucky Downs.
Well, it's a quiet time on the racetrack as everybody with the top horses is basically getting them ready for the Breeders' Cup Classic and all the other Breeders' Cup races. There was one Grade 1 race run last year, and I always like this race, the Queen Elizabeth II at Keeneland, restricted to 3-year-old fillies on the grass. And the lineup was really good. A horse by the name of Laurelin was undefeated coming into it. Fion, F-I-O-N-N, was 6 for 8 lifetime and had beaten Nitrogen, a really good DJ Stables horse on the turf, on the square, the one time they met up. The winner was kind of the third horse everybody was looking at, a horse by the name of Lush Lips, trained by Brendan Walsh, who, by the way, is having a great meet at Keeneland. He's 7 for 26. Again, this is Tuesday before they start this week's racing. But he's 7 for 26, winning at 27%, and is the leading trainer. But on his heels, Todd Pletcher, 6 for 13, 46%. But anyways, Brendan Walsh has a nice filly on his hands, and it'll be interesting to see what he does from here, Zoe.
Yeah, she was very impressive. Terrific ride she got. Brendan did say it's unlikely she'll head to the Breeders' Cup in 3 weeks, just a little bit close for her. So, one thing about the Breeders' Cup being at Del Mar, you've got an awful lot of good races after Breeders' Cup as well. Like you'll have the Grade 1 Matriarch that a lot of East Coast trainers point to as well. So not sure where she's going, but she looked very good. And Brendan's having a heck of a meet. Top in the trainers' standings. Like that's a first for Brendan. So kudos to him and his team.
Yeah, Fionn, the favorite in there, got a little bit of a rough trip. She got a bad start, wound up, I think, finishing fourth. Brad Cox was strongly considering the filly and mare turf before that race. I'd probably not now. And I think it's even more than just the 3 weeks, the turnaround from the QE2 to the filly and mare turf. I think I mentioned this last week. 6 different times European-based 3-year-old fillies have been shipped over for the Breeders' Cup, have run against older fillies and mares, and have won. U.S.-based, North American-based 3-year-old fillies are 0 for 37 in the Breeders' Cup. None of them have even finished second, and only 3 of them have hit the board. So for whatever reason, 3-year-old American fillies, have really been up against the 8 ball, probably primarily because they got to run against the Europeans. But anyway, that's another reason, I think, why the reluctance to bring a 3-year-old filly back from the QE2 to the filly mare turf.
I just wish more people, those are some pretty important stats, no doubt, but I just wish more people would try it. So, but it looks like everybody's, maybe because of what the stats you've already thrown out, it looks like most trainers have just given up on the idea. So we will see what happens in the future. But this is a nice horse. All 3 of them are nice horses, and we'll see what happens with them then. So out your way, Zoe. California flagged the stakes. The star of the show was Lovesick Blues. And how do you pronounce Liberato's last name? Broccio, yeah. He's a delightful. Yeah, he was delightful when we had him on the podcast. But he's certainly thinking outside the box thinking. He won the Grade 1 Bing Crosby with Lovesick Blues, a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. How does he prep? He takes this horse onto a turf race against California breds. And he didn't even win, but I don't think that is all that relevant. It was obviously just his way of getting some, the horse a little bit fitter, a little bit tighter. But it was something you don't see every day of the week for sure.
It was really, really cool. Let's not take anything away from the winner, Manor Rose for Mullins, 5-year-old gelding. Very good horse. He wins by a nose, but the story really was Lovesick Blues. He went very wide. He came down the lane. I thought he was going to get there for a moment, and he'll run dirt or turf. Like, he's just a cool dude. He came in with one of the best works that I think you could possibly see on a horse. It was only like 51. I don't think he's the best workhorse on dirt in the mornings. And one thing you have to remember out here in Southern California is that we don't work horses on the turf course. So he works on the dirt. He's a dirt horse. He's a turf horse. But that work was fantastic. But it was in 51. So are you going to get your horse fit going 51, or are you going to give him a soft race down the hill and hope he wins? Well, he almost won, and that was a very good prep. He's a really cool old horse, and I'm looking forward to seeing him run over a track that he's a Grade 1 winner at, and he's proven at, and he could not be doing any better.
A 7-year-old gelding. Yep. We talked about him, of course, back on the podcast when Lee joined us, a part-time movie producer as well as a horse trainer. The horse really has kind of turned things around in his 7-year-old season when Lee got him, when they bought him. He's an owner as well as the breeder. I think the horse is better on dirt than on turf now.
Yeah, he is.
He got a 105 buyer when he won the Bing Crosby, and there was not a thing fluky about it. And to me, that makes him at Del Mar again, at 6 furlongs again, one of the leading contenders for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I thought it was an inspired choice for a prep race. They were initially going to just train him right up to the Breeders' Cup, and he said the horse was tearing the barn down. And I thought he ran sensationally to finish second. So I'm looking forward to watching him run in the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, and the better sort of read into the situation, too. He wasn't even the favorite, which is shocking coming off a Grade 1 win into a Cowbird race. But it'll be interesting to see how he does in the Breeders' Cup Sprint.
It's time for the First TV Work of the Week. The Work of the Week is brought to you by First TV. And this week, it's Nysos, who breezed 6 furlongs in 1:11-1 on Sunday at Santa Anita. Bob Baffert said afterwards he was very happy with the work. Nysos is, of course, coming off wins in the Grade 3 Triple Bend Stakes and Grade 2 San Diego Handicap as he prepares for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. And I can attest, he looks as good as ever here, Randy. If we were running the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile today, would Nysos be on top for you?
Well, he's going to be, I think, the likely favorite. What a tough race that is. If you look at it from even though Rated by Mare is not running, which surprises me, but Full Serrano, right, the defending champ, who ran really well in defeat in the Goodwood. But I think Nysos, I think he would be the favorite right now if the race were run this weekend.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV. All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
And the TDN Writers Room brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. Boy, West Point and Miguel Clement together, 1 and 1A, bread and butter. They've been on a roll. They teamed up for their third graded stakes win in 4 weeks. And not only that, 1-2 when Leray and Gal in a Rush ran in the Ontario Fashion Stakes at Woodbine on Saturday. Meanwhile, Gal in a Rush, a go-sapper mare that captured the Grade 2 Masters Stakes, the Presque Isle Masters last month, will now move on to the Keeneland November breeding stock sale.
Well, that's a wrap on this week's show. I want to thank my partners, Zoe Cadman and Randy Moss. I want to thank our Gainesway guest of the week, Ned Toffey, and also the people that work behind the scenes on our podcast, Sue Finley, Katie Petroniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Olio LaRocca. We'll see you next week.
Bill finishes on a strong note. He got Ned Toffey right again.
Wow. You must be an early bird. Early mornings are good for you, Bill. We'll remember this.
5 a.m. next week, Eastern.